I hate my brother. Really. For everyone he is a golden boy. But for me he is just a parasite who has been dragging the blanket over himself all his life. I feel like a freak, because I can't think like that, but it's in me. I hate my brother. I really do. To everyone else he's the golden boy. Perfect grades, charming smile, mom's favorite, dad's pride. But to me, he's just a parasite who's been stealing the spotlight my entire life. And I know how awful that sounds. Believe me, sometimes I feel like a monster for even thinking this way. But it's the truth, and it's been rotting inside me for years. It started small when we were kids. He was younger, so of course everyone doted on him. He'd trip and fall. Suddenly it was a family emergency. I'd scrape my knee. Mom would tell me to toughen up. He'd bring home a decent grade on a test. Dad would brag about him for days. I'd get an even better score. Barely a nod. It was like my achievements were just background noise to his existence. And no matter how much I tried to brush it off, it ate at me. Slowly. Quietly. I became the kid who worked twice as hard for half the recognition. He became the kid who could mess up and still be celebrated. It didn't matter if I stayed up all night studying, if I helped mom with chores, if I followed every rule like some kind of soldier. The spotlight was always on him. He didn't even have to ask for it. It just followed him around like some divine curse for me. And here's the worst part. He knew it. Oh, he absolutely knew. He'd flash me that smug grin whenever Dad would pat him on the shoulder or when Mom would post his achievements all over Facebook like he was some celebrity. He'd look at me like, "See? You'll never measure up." And I swear, sometimes I wanted to wipe that smile off his face permanently. But of course, nobody else saw it. To the rest of the world, he was the angel. The good kid. The sweet one. If I ever complained, I'd get labeled as jealous, bitter, ungrateful. "Why can't you be more like your brother?" became the soundtrack of my adolescence. Every time I heard it, it was like someone shoved a knife a little deeper into me. Things really escalated when we got older. He started dating before me, obviously. He was taller, more confident, and people just naturally gravitated toward him. I was awkward, quiet, and constantly overshadowed. I remember one night at a family barbecue, he showed up with his girlfriend, this perfect, gorgeous girl who looked like she walked out of a magazine. My parents acted like they'd won the lottery. They kept gushing, "Look at our son, what a catch." Meanwhile, I sat there chewing my overcooked burger, invisible. That was the night I realized something dark. I didn't just hate the attention he got. I hated him. Not in the sibling, "Ugh, you're annoying" way. No. I hated him on a level that scared me. Every laugh he got felt like it was stolen from me. Every compliment he received burned me alive. Every little victory he had felt like another nail in the coffin of who I was supposed to be. One time, I'll never forget this, I actually fantasized about ruining one of his big moments. He was supposed to give this speech at school after winning some leadership award, of course. I thought about sneaking into the auditorium, unplugging the mic, making him stumble in front of everyone. I didn't do it, but the fact that I wanted to scared me. That thought has never left me. And here's the confession I can't tell anyone. I think I did ruin one of his moments. Maybe not on purpose. Maybe. I don't even know anymore. But there was this one night. God, I still replay it in my head. He was getting ready for a big exam the next day, the kind that determined scholarships and future stuff. He left his notes in the living room, perfectly organized. I walked past them, and something inside me just snapped. I grabbed them, crumpled a few pages, spilled water on the rest, and tossed the pile in the trash. When he woke up the next morning, he was frantic. He tore through the house, yelling about how he couldn't find his notes. Mom and Dad were furious, at me of course, for not helping him look. I played dumb. I stood there watching him panic, and for the first time in my life, I felt something I had never felt before. Satisfaction. Pure, twisted satisfaction. He ended up doing badly on that exam. Not terrible, but enough that it shook his perfect boy reputation a little. Mom cried. Dad sulked. And me. I smiled when nobody was looking. But here's the thing. That smile didn't last long. Because once the adrenaline wore off, I realized what I'd done. I realized I'd crossed a line I could never uncross. I wasn't just jealous anymore. I was dangerous. Nobody knows. To this day, everyone thinks it was an accident. Maybe he misplaced the notes, maybe the cat knocked something over, whatever. But I know. And I think he suspects, too. He looks at me differently now, like he can sense that I'm not just the bitter older sibling. I'm something else. And that terrifies me. So yeah, that's my confession. I hate my brother, I sabotaged him, and sometimes I wonder if I'm capable of even worse. What do you think? Am I just the jealous sibling everyone assumes I am? Or am I something darker? After that night with the exam, something inside me shifted. I thought the guilt would eat me alive, that I'd lose sleep over what I did. But here's the ugly truth. The guilt came in waves, but the satisfaction stayed longer. It was like tasting power for the first time. For once, I wasn't the invisible sibling. I had control, even if nobody else knew it. Of course, life went on. My brother brushed off the bad exam and bounced back, because that's what he always did. He still got praise, he still got attention, he still made everything look effortless. But there was a crack now, and I put it there. That thought became addictive. I found myself looking for more cracks, more opportunities to remind him, and myself, that he wasn't untouchable. One of those opportunities came sooner than I expected. It was his birthday, a big one, the kind parents obsess over. Mom spent weeks planning the party, inviting family, baking, decorating. Dad even rented a little hall so the whole extended family could come. It was supposed to be his night. And deep down, I couldn't stand it. I told myself I was just bitter, that I'd smile through it and keep quiet. But as the night went on, something ugly kept gnawing at me. Every toast was about him. Every hug, every picture, every fake smile plastered on relatives' faces, it was all about the golden boy. I was a shadow in the background, holding a half-empty soda and wishing I could disappear. Until, of course, I did the opposite. Someone left the cake unattended before it was time to bring it out. A 3-layer masterpiece, perfectly decorated with his name written across the top in blue frosting. I stared at it for what felt like hours, my hands twitching. Nobody was watching. Nobody ever watched me. So I reached out, dragged my finger through the icing, and smeared it across his perfect little name. It wasn't much. Just a line. A stupid, childish act. But when Mom found it, she went ballistic. She blamed the caterers, the kids running around, even Dad for not paying attention. Everyone scrambled to fix it, to cover the imperfection with extra frosting. And I stood in the corner, sipping my soda, hiding a smile. But then he saw me. My brother. He didn't say anything, but his eyes locked on mine. Like he knew. Like he could smell the spite radiating off me. He didn't tell anyone, but that look, it said everything. From that day on, something changed between us. He didn't treat me like the harmless older sibling anymore. There was suspicion in his eyes. He started watching me, quietly, like he was waiting for me to slip. And honestly, that only pushed me further. Because now, it wasn't just about jealousy. It was a game. A twisted, silent game between me and him. He knew I hated him, but he couldn't prove anything. And I loved that. The next move I made wasn't even planned. It just happened. He just started driving. Of course, Dad bought him a car the moment he got his license, while I had to ride the bus everywhere. It was parked outside, gleaming in the driveway, like a constant reminder that he got everything handed to him. One night, when everyone was asleep, I slipped outside with a key. My hand shook as I pressed it against the paint, dragging a thin, deliberate line across the side of the car. The sound was horrible. Sharp. Final. When I stepped back, my heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. The line wasn't huge, but it was visible. Obvious. And when he saw it the next morning, his face drained of color. Mom and Dad lost their minds, ranting about disrespectful neighbors or random vandals. My brother didn't say a word. But he looked at me again with those same eyes. suspicious, accusing. And I smiled again when no one was watching. It became a pattern after that. Little things. Messing with his alarm clock so he'd oversleep. Accidentally spilling water on his homework. Switching his phone charger with a broken one so he'd think his battery was dying. They were small, petty acts, but each one gave me the tiniest taste of power. And each time, his suspicion grew. But here's where it gets dangerous. The more I did it, the more I started to enjoy the risk. The thrill of almost getting caught. The rush of knowing I could ruin him, and nobody would believe him if he tried to accuse me. Because to everyone else, I was just the bitter older sibling. Annoying, sure, but harmless. One night, though, I went too far. He had this girlfriend, the same one from before, the one who looked like she belonged in a magazine. Everyone adored her. Naturally. She'd come over for dinner, laugh at Dad's dumb jokes, help Mom in the kitchen. She fit into our family like she was custom-made for him. And me. I sat there like an afterthought, chewing silently while they all acted like she was already my sister-in-law. I don't know what possessed me, but I added her on social media one night. Just casually. She accepted, probably out of politeness. And then I started talking to her. At first it was innocent. Funny memes, little jokes. But then I started slipping in comments. Subtle ones. About how my brother wasn't as perfect as he seemed. About how he could be selfish, careless, cold. To my surprise, she responded. She didn't argue. In fact, she admitted she'd noticed some of those traits too. It was like a door cracked open, and I shoved it wide. I spent weeks planting seeds of doubt in her head, all while pretending to be the supportive sibling. My brother had no idea. But I knew. And I knew it was working. The night she broke up with him, I was in the next room. I heard every word through the thin walls. Her voice was shaky, but firm. You've changed. You're not who I thought you were. He begged, he pleaded, he even cried. But she left anyway. And I laughed. Quietly. To myself. It was the most satisfying moment of my life. Watching him crumble, hearing him choke back sobs while I sat on my bed, smiling in the dark. I destroyed him, and he didn't even know it was me. But that night was also when something terrifying hit me. I realized I wasn't just hurting him anymore. I was starting to enjoy it. Crave it. It wasn't about being invisible or overshadowed. It was about control. About proving to myself that I could tear him down piece by piece while everyone else still praised him. And now, he looks at me differently. Not just suspicious. Afraid. He should be. Because I don't think I'm done yet. So here I am, confessing this to strangers on the internet. I've ruined his exam, scratched his car, sabotaged his routines, and poisoned his relationship. And nobody knows. Not my parents, not my friends, not even him. Not fully. But sometimes, late at night, I wonder if he does know. If he's just waiting for me to take the next step. And the scarier thought? I want to. What do you think? Am I sick for feeling this way? Or is this just years of being ignored finally breaking me? The breakup should have been enough. It should have satisfied whatever twisted hunger I had inside me. But instead, it lit a fire. Watching my brother fall apart, quietly, in his own way, was like fuel. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one in his shadow. He was in mine, even if he didn't realize it. And I wanted more. At first, I told myself I was just balancing the scales. That all the little sabotages, all the lies and whispers, were just payback for years of being ignored. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I didn't want balance. I wanted him destroyed. I wanted the golden boy image shattered so badly that even Mom and Dad would finally look at him and see what I saw. Nothing. And so I waited for my chance. It came sooner than I expected. My brother had been chosen for this regional competition, some academic thing where students from different schools went head-to-head. Of course, he was the one nominated. The teachers practically worshipped him. Mom and Dad were ecstatic. This is his big opportunity, they kept saying, a stepping stone to scholarships. I sat there, listening, smiling politely, while inside I was planning. The night before the competition, he left his laptop on the kitchen table, wide open. He must have trusted that nobody would touch it. Stupid. I slipped in after everyone was asleep. His notes, his presentations, his carefully crafted files, they were all right there. I didn't delete them. That would have been too obvious. Instead, I replaced sections with nonsense. Gibberish sentences, random facts twisted just enough to sound believable but wrong. It was surgical. Precise. The next day, I watched him on stage from the audience. At first, he spoke with his usual confidence. But then, as he reached the parts I'd tampered with, I saw his face falter. He stumbled. He stuttered. The judges exchanged confused glances. The audience whispered. He tried to recover, but the damage was done. By the time he finished, the polite applause felt more like pity. Mom looked devastated. Dad's jaw was clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. My brother sat down, his face pale, his hands trembling. And me. I clapped louder than anyone else. Later that night, when we got home, the silence was suffocating. Nobody wanted to talk about what happened. Nobody wanted to admit that their golden boy had crashed and burned. But I could see it in his eyes. He knew. He knew someone had tampered with his work. And once again, he looked at me with that same quiet suspicion. This time, though, there was something else in his stare. Anger. For the first time, he confronted me. Not in front of the family, of course. He cornered me in the hallway when nobody was around. His voice was low, almost shaking. "What did you do?" he hissed. I played dumb. Smirked. "What are you talking about?" His hands clenched into fists, but he didn't hit me. He just stared at me, like he was trying to figure out if I was even human anymore. Then he muttered, "You're sick," and walked away. And that stung. More than I thought it would. Because for a split second, I almost felt guilty again. Almost. But then I remembered how Mom still made excuses for him, how Dad still acted like he was the future of the family, how everyone still saw him as the golden child. And I thought, if I'm sick, it's because they made me this way. The weeks after that were tense. My brother avoided me as much as possible, but I could feel him watching. Sometimes I'd catch him staring when he thought I wasn't looking, and it sent a shiver down my spine. Not because I was afraid of him, but because I realized he was afraid of me. And I liked it. The next opportunity came during summer. My parents decided to throw a neighborhood barbecue, the kind where everyone gathers, drinks too much, and brags about their kids. Naturally, they planned to parade my brother around again, talking about his bright future, as if the competition fiasco never happened. I couldn't let that stand. So I planned something bigger. Riskier. While everyone was outside laughing and drinking, I slipped upstairs into his room. On his desk was his phone, unlocked. He must have been careless again, too busy playing the role of Mr. Perfect downstairs. I scrolled through his messages, his social media, everything. And that's when I found it, a string of private messages to one of his friends, complaining about Mom and Dad. Stuff like, "I can't stand how they pressure me," and "sometimes I wish I could just disappear." Gold. I screenshotted everything, sent it to myself, then quietly slipped back into the party. Later that night, when everyone was still buzzing from alcohol and good food, I accidentally let one of the screenshots slip in front of Mom. She snatched the phone from my hand before I could delete it, and her face went pale. The explosion was nuclear. Mom screamed at him. Dad demanded explanations. Relatives whispered behind their drinks. My brother tried to defend himself, saying those were private conversations, that he didn't mean it like that. But the damage was done. Their golden boy suddenly looked ungrateful, selfish, weak. And I sat there, sipping my soda again, watching the crown slip from his head. That night, I thought I'd feel victorious. But something was different. Because when I walked past his room later, I heard him crying. Not just the quiet, restrained kind of crying he usually did when things got tough. No, this was broken. Raw. He sounded like someone who'd lost everything. And for the first time, I hesitated. I stood outside his door, listening, and something twisted in my chest. Was I enjoying this? Or was I destroying something I couldn't put back together? The truth hit me like a punch. I didn't care. In fact, the sound of his sobs made me feel powerful. Like a god pulling strings. Like I'd finally proven to the universe that he wasn't untouchable. But here's the part one can't stop thinking about. What if I've gone too far? What if I've broken him in a way that won't heal? Because lately, he doesn't just look at me with suspicion or anger. He looks at me with something else. Something darker. And I have this gnawing fear that maybe, just maybe, he's planning his move. So here I am again, confessing to strangers. I've sabotaged him, ruined his reputation, humiliated him in front of family. And I don't know if I'm done. But I also don't know if he's done. What do you think? Have I crossed a line I can't come back from? Or is this exactly what he deserves? I thought I was in control. For months, I told myself that I was pulling the strings, that my brother was just a puppet dancing in the shadow of my anger. But lately, things have started to feel different. The game I thought I was winning? I'm not sure I'm the one holding the cards anymore. It started with little things. Subtle. At first, I didn't even notice. My phone would be in a slightly different spot when I left it on my desk. My backpack felt lighter one day, heavier the next. Once, I found my notebook open to a random page I know I hadn't left it on. Small details, but enough to make my stomach twist. Then there were the looks. He didn't glare at me anymore, not like before. No. His eyes followed me in silence, calm but sharp, like he was studying me, measuring me. And worse, sometimes I caught the faintest smirk on his lips. The kind of smirk that made me realize he knew something. I tried to shake it off. Told myself I was paranoid, that I was just imagining things. But then one night, I was in my room, scrolling on my phone, when the screen suddenly went black. Dead. I knew it had charge, but when I plugged it in, nothing. Later, when I checked it again, the phone worked, but my messages were off. Threads had been opened that I hadn't touched. Drafts were missing. And that's when it hit me. He was fighting back. The realization should have terrified me. But instead, it thrilled me. For so long, I'd been the one playing offense. Now it felt like he'd finally joined the game. And part of me wanted to see how far he'd go. The first real move came during dinner. Mom had cooked this big meal, and for once, everyone seemed in a good mood. I was cutting into my food when my brother casually said, "Hey, do you remember when you ruined my competition notes?" Silence. The air froze. My fork clattered against the plate. Mom and Dad whipped their heads toward me, eyes wide. I forced a laugh. "What are you talking about?" But he didn't laugh. He just leaned back in his chair, calm as ever, and said, "Yeah, I can't prove it. But I know it was you. And maybe one day, Mom and Dad will figure out who you really are." The table stayed silent. Mom brushed it off with a nervous laugh. Dad changed the subject, but I could feel the tension buzzing in the air. He wasn't accusing me outright. He was planting seeds. Just like I had done with his girlfriend. I wanted to kill him in that moment. But at the same time, I couldn't stop smiling. Because this was it. The game was no longer one-sided. After that, the back and forth escalated. I'd mess with his stuff, and he'd mess with mine. My alarm didn't go off one morning. I was late for school. My homework disappeared from my desk. He'd drop little comments in front of our parents, carefully worded so they couldn't call it proof but enough to make me sweat. And then came the night everything shifted. It was late. I was in bed half asleep, when I heard my door creak open. My heart pounded as I sat up, and there he was, my brother, standing in the dark, silhouetted in the hallway light. For a long time, he didn't move. Just stood there, staring at me. Finally, he said, "You think you're so clever. But I can play your game too." And then he closed the door and walked away. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I checked my stuff. My notebooks, my laptop, my drawers, everything. Nothing seemed out of place. But that made it worse. because now I knew he was in my head. He'd gotten under my skin in a way I never expected. It didn't stop me from striking again, though. A few weeks later, he was applying for a scholarship. He'd worked for months on the application essay, revising, perfecting, polishing every word. The night before the deadline, when he left his laptop unattended, I couldn't resist. I didn't delete the essay. No, that would have been obvious. Instead, I added a few lines. Inappropriate jokes. Subtle insults about the school. Just enough to ruin his chances if he didn't catch them. The next day, he submitted it, without rereading. When the rejection email came, he didn't even look surprised. He just glanced at me with that same knowing smile. And that's when I realized, maybe he had reread it. Maybe he knew I tampered with it. Maybe he submitted it anyway, just to see what I'd do next. That thought has been haunting me ever since. Because it means he's not just reacting, he's strategizing. The tension between us is unbearable now. Every conversation is laced with hidden meaning. Every look feels like a challenge. We don't scream, we don't fight, we don't even argue. It's worse than that. It's a quiet, calculated war, and nobody else in the family seems to notice. But I know. And he knows. The scariest part? I don't even want to stop anymore. I don't want peace. I want to win. But lately, I've been wondering, what does winning even mean? Making him miserable? Ruining his life completely? Or something darker? Last night, I caught myself thinking about it. Really thinking. What if the only way to truly win is to make sure he can't fight back at all? The thought startled me. Not because it was there, but because it didn't scare me the way it should. And maybe he knows that too. Maybe that's why he watches me so closely now. So here's my confession. This isn't sibling rivalry anymore. This isn't jealousy or pettiness. This is war. And I don't know how far either of us is willing to go. What do you think? Am I just spiraling into madness, or is this the only way to finally end the game? It all came to a head last weekend. I knew it was coming, even if I didn't want to admit it. The tension between us had been building for months, a silent storm that neither of us could ignore. Every glance, every word, every small act of sabotage or retaliation had stacked on top of each other until the weight of it was unbearable. I could feel it in my chest, a constant pressure, like a countdown ticking in my veins. It started innocuously enough. Dad had taken us to the lake for a family day, one of those perfect, sunny days he loved to photograph. My brother and I sat on opposite sides of the dock, casting lines into the water. The rest of the family chattered around us, oblivious to the war unfolding between us. He looked calm, relaxed, smiling at Mom when she called his name. But I could feel him watching me, waiting. I broke the silence first, quietly, testing him. You know, I said, not meeting his eyes. Sometimes I wonder if Mom and Dad would even notice if you disappeared for a week. He didn't flinch, didn't react, just adjusted his line, keeping his tone casual. I think they'd notice. But I think they'd notice more if you disappeared. The words hit harder than any insult I could have thrown. That smugness in his voice, the same smirk I'd been chasing for years, made my stomach twist. He was daring me, challenging me. That night, we stayed late by the lake. Everyone else had packed up and left, leaving just the two of us in the dim glow of the moonlight reflecting on the water. I felt the pull, the tension, and I knew something was about to happen. I had my plan. I'd been thinking about it for weeks, meticulously, imagining the perfect act of domination. Something so calculated that no one could ever prove it was me. Something to finally put me on top. I approached him, pretending to be casual, like the years of sabotage, the exams, the cars, the social media, the messages, the scholarship, all of it, were irrelevant. I tried to sound light, joking about the summer, the water, the fish that weren't biting. And then I slipped. I laughed too loudly at a joke he didn't make. He raised an eyebrow, calm, dangerous, and whispered, "Careful. You've done a lot, haven't you?" My chest tightened. I wanted to lie, to deny it, to brush it off like I always did. But the truth, it spills out in moments like that. "Yeah," I admitted, voice low. I've done a lot. But you don't even know what I'm capable of. He turned to face me fully then, his eyes glowing in the moonlight. There was no fear, no hesitation. Only recognition. I do, he said. And in that single sentence, he changed everything. Because he did. He knew. I hadn't even realized it until that moment, but every act, every tiny sabotage, every whispered seed of doubt, had been anticipated. He'd let me think I was in control, thought I was winning, while he quietly watched, biding his time. And now, here he was, calm, collected, and ready to turn the game on me. We circled each other like predators. I tried to keep my voice steady, my movements deliberate. But inside, my pulse was screaming. This was no longer about petty revenge or sibling rivalry. It was survival. The next hours were a blur. Words escalated. Small jabs turned into accusations. Every secret, every betrayal, every moment of manipulation was laid bare. You've ruined everything, he spat at me. Do you even know what you've done? I laughed, bitter and hollow. I've ruined you. And I'd do it again. He lunged at me, figuratively first, then literally. We wrestled, struggled, words cutting sharper than our hands ever could. I felt the weight of years of anger, jealousy, and competition compressing into one terrifying moment. And then it happened. I don't even remember how exactly. One push, a misstep, a slip on the wet dock. My brother fell backward into the water. I froze, heart hammering, mind screaming. He surfaced immediately, coughing, spitting, glaring at me with pure, unfiltered hatred. You could have killed me, he shouted, voice shaking with rage and fear. You're insane. And I realized he was right. Everything we'd done, everything I'd done, was insane. But here's the thing. I didn't feel remorse. Not fully. Not yet. I felt exhilaration, terror, and something darker I don't even have words for. The line between hate and obsession, between jealousy and malice, had completely blurred. We climbed out of the water, soaked, trembling, and the night was silent. The stars reflected on the lake, cold and indifferent, like witnesses who wouldn't intervene. He didn't forgive me. I didn't apologize. We didn't hug it out or shake hands. We just stared. Two siblings, enemies in everything but blood. When we got home, Mom and Dad asked what had happened. We shrugged, lied, claimed we had slipped. They believed it. Of course they did. They never suspected that the years of subtle sabotage, ruined moments, broken relationships, and stolen opportunities had all been orchestrated by me. That the golden boy had almost been broken for good. But my brother knows. I know he knows. And he's different now. Cold. Calculating. Watching. Waiting. I can feel it every time he enters the room, every time he talks, every time he smiles too casually. And me. I'm not the same either. I feel the pull of something I can't stop. The need to win, to dominate, to control, it hasn't faded. If anything, it's grown stronger. I keep telling myself it's just a game. A war of wits between siblings. But sometimes I lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, imagining the next move. And the thought that terrifies me most? He's probably imagining the same thing. So here I am, confessing to strangers, because no one else can know this. My family will never suspect the depth of our feud, the darkness that has grown between us. My parents think we're just difficult teenagers. Friends think we're just competitive. But it's more than that. It's a war. And neither of us will stop. Do you think I should end it? Walk away before it gets worse? Or is this what siblings do? Just on a darker, more dangerous level than anyone admits. Have you ever hated someone so much you became the person you swore you'd never be? Because I have. And the terrifying truth? Nobody is safe.